I'm Matt Landau from VRMB, and this is Unlocked, Season 7, Unglamorous. This episode's brought to you by Point Central, the leaders in smart home automation, and Breezeway, a property care and operations platform. Ryan Bailey is the co-founder and CEO of TravelNet Solutions and its company Track, which is a property management software platform and actually one of the winners of our Keystone Awards, which is the first and only independent software research to share the findings freely with the vacation rental management community. And the metaphor that we chose of the Keystone is because it's that piece of the bridge that holds everything together. It's what allows a vacation rental management company to flex and to bear weight and to grow. And together with the co-founder of that program, Terry White, we identified Track a number of years ago as a very different kind of property management software. And I'm not sure that I could have fully explained to you all the reasons why back then, nor do I think I could even do it now, which is why I wanted to sit down with the company's founder and learn firsthand how he thinks through development. From starting out with no money and not knowing what the hell he was doing and being really pumped about it, to his first software acquisition, to the leap to the enterprise realm. What I'd suggest you listen for most is Ryan's obsession with both the future of software architecture, but also the role of humans in all of that. If you're like me and still trying to figure out what you're gonna have for lunch today, it helps to use insight like Ryan's as your light posts, as your decision-making prisms in navigating forward. Let's go.
I went to University of Minnesota Duluth, and I went to school for, originally I wanted to be in marketing and business, and then was thinking about being a teacher. And then I went back to marketing and communications. And then the last year, I was about 26 credits short, and that's when we started this company.
You're 26 credits short, as in there was no possible way you were going to get the 26 credits?
Well, I just left school before the 26 credits to get my degree. So I went to University of Minnesota to play football, and so I was there for 4 years and had a blast. And my brother and I, another guy, started the company, and then I left school to buy resortsandlodges.com, and they're like, hey, you need to go full time and do this thing if we're going to invest the money. And I'm like, all right, well, I'm going to leave school and do it. So,
did you know what you were doing?
Well, no, I had no idea what I was doing. But I mean, I was pretty pumped about it. I mean, I was juiced, you know. I mean, we were going to change the world in commerce on the internet. So,
what's the first version of that business?
The first version was availability tracker. So it was a pretty primitive, I mean, it was an online calendar. So these companies forever, feels like for centuries, had a calendar on their desk and at the front desk, and they would check people in and book their availability right on these big calendars on their desk. And we digitalized it and moved it to a calendar online. And it was literally just a calendar online. You could click on the days and then send the booking through and put the credit card in. And we did that for up in northern Midwest up there. There's a lot of fishing lodges and boutique hotels and lodges and small little mom and pop resorts. So we started there and had a bunch of those companies on.
You would go to the hotel itself. You'd basically show up and say, we've got a tool that we think would help?
Yeah, well, it wasn't that strategic. It was me in college basement, and I was calling these companies, telling them, hey, you know, $12 million is going to book online this year. It's going to be billions one day. You need to allow consumers to go to your website and book online. And so it was $240 a year. They could get an online booking engine on their website. So it was pretty affordable. But it was still very, very difficult. I mean, I didn't even make a sale for 6 months. And my first sale, that in my mind I thought I made the first sale, was I was giving it away for free. You know, so I mean, it was tough sledding.
But that pitch that you just told me, there's going to be this amount of sales this year, and our tool is only $240 for the year. That's a salesman pitch, right? Mm-hmm. That's a way of framing an opportunity. You think you've always had that? Or is that something you learned?
You know, I read a sales book maybe, and I mean, I was just, when we started the business, I was reading sales books and business books, and I probably caught up with like Zig Ziglar or Tom Hopkins or, you know, one of those early guys of how to pitch and how to sell and create value and tell a story and how it could impact a business. It'd be a positive return on investment, all that business language. But I really didn't know quite what I was doing, but I believed in it and I was passionate about it. So they're like, yeah, I'll, you know, after 6 months and giving it away for free. And then I went back home that summer, and in the summer I sold like 400 companies in a summer at $240. And my brother and I and our early partner, the engineer, like, wow, we have something here. I mean, this could be interesting.
So people start using that, start saving them a whole bunch of time. They're realizing that potential that you sold to them on the phone. And what was the next evolution? Like, what was the next big leap?
Yeah, so I was on a site. It was really a directory. It was a yellow pages, and I was going onto this website, resortsandlodges.com, and calling all the listings on the website. There was 9,000 listings on this website, and I was calling all the listings like a yellow book and yellow pages, and I was calling them, saying, giving them the pitch of online bookings and how it's going to help their business. And I'm like, oh man, this is just going to take forever. I'm just going to scroll down to the bottom of the website in the footer, and I called Mike Knox, the CEO. You know, I'm 21 years old. I call him up and, hey, 9,000 of your companies need an online booking engine. You know, why don't you just have all your companies use our booking engine? And it was a long story short, but he said it's really a test vehicle. He only has, of all the 9,000 properties, it has one paying or a couple paying customers on it. It was a project that Polyphasic, a private company, partnered with Michigan State University and NASA, gave them a few $1 million grant to give them to do this website, resortsandlodges.com. And it was a test vehicle that would understand how they build large-scale enterprise content management application that would build large-scale websites. So resortsandlodges.com wasn't even a business venture. It was simply a test vehicle and a project with, you know, the masters in Michigan State University. And so he said, a couple people have offered to buy it before, and why don't you and your brother and your partner buy it? You know, like, oh yeah, that's a great idea. So I talked to Charles, my brother, and Darren, and I said, this is going to be huge, and we could take all our 400 customers on availability tracker, and now we could offer them distribution. So we could offer them distribution on resortsandlodges.com and bring more traffic to their website, which would drive more online bookings. And it would be more of a full solution we can offer our customer, and more of their problems to drive more traffic to their website, to, you know, to drive more demand. And so, long story short, they said, you know, here's the price. Talked to, you know, I had no money. I'm in college, so the two guys that put the money in, my brother and Darren, each took $100,000 second mortgages out on their homes. And I don't know, somehow we convinced each other like this was going to be huge. And we drove to Detroit, Michigan in April 2003, and we bought resortsandlodges.com for $200,000. And then in like 18 months, we were doing about $10,000 a month in revenue on availability tracker. And then in 18 months, we sold like $1.8 million in listings on resortsandlodges.com to hundreds and hundreds of companies that would want to get listed on the site to create traffic to their website. And the site was doing, when we first bought it, was doing like 180,000 visitors a year. And at its peak, we got about, through SEO and email marketing and pay-per-click and all of our marketing expertise, where we cut our teeth early on in that business, we got about 7 million visitors we'd serve a year on the website.
So this was like good timing.
yeah, it was a blessing.
Is there something about the timing that you seem to have hit with that you see in vacation rentals today?
When I look at resortsandlodge.com and availability tracker and some of our early innovations that we were building, and the acceleration that we saw and what the internet did. I mean, we were selling at that time, it's crazy to think about, 15, 20 years ago, we were battling and selling against people putting ads in Sunday newspaper.
Right, bulletin boards.
Right? I mean, we were battling that, and just the acceleration that in years, what the internet did and how it transformed digital marketing. The speed, the acceleration, the speed to impact was incredible. And I think that has given us a lot of perspective in what we're seeing today. And I mean, everyone wants a piece of the vacational market. I mean, it's the hottest market in the world in hospitality. It's the fastest growing. I mean, everyone wants a piece of this thing. And the acceleration that our industry is facing right now in vacational is incredible. It reminds me a lot of the early days, 20, 22 years ago, building our first ventures.
So you've taken me now from the college dorm room to what's a pretty sizable business that you're now running that has both distribution and the reservation thing built in. I think you had one more leap professionally that gets you closer to where we are today. And what's that one?
From the very, very beginning, we've always thought about how do we sit down with a partner. And it's easier for me to verbalize looking at today than where I was then. But you look at our timeline and the origin of the company and where we've come from in the last 20 years, it's always about you're talking to someone and you're trying to really solve their problem, really trying to listen, be empathetic of their challenges, and really trying to understand and know what their issues and challenges are in their business. And then say, okay, well, how do we leverage and utilize technology with our engineering and product expertise to create efficiencies there and for them to leverage technology to make their businesses better for their customers. And so along that journey, we went in and we built from availability tracker, resorts and lodges, we built our first generation property management system, which was Res Tracker. And so we had this whole vision of we land with advertising and availability tracker, and then we'd move them into more of our platform approach with Res Tracker. And Res Tracker was in 04, 05 was our first crack at building property management software and in the cloud. And so when we'd sit down with companies, long story short, it didn't go well and it failed. It kind of was painful, right? I mean, we learned a lot through that Res Tracker. We only had about 22, 23 customers onto it, but we learned early on about timing, referencing what you said earlier around timing with Res Tracker, because Res Tracker, cloud property management system, people are like, what? We're driving up to the North Shore of Minnesota, or you're driving to, the Wisconsin Dells of Wisconsin, or Door County on Lake Michigan, and you're meeting with all these cool properties. You're like, what? I'm going to put my accounting and finance and what, the cloud? What the heck is the cloud? And then in our business venture, we forgot to put in our business plan, like, hey, people need high-speed internet to be on the cloud. So that world looks different today with now 5G. People don't even think about it. But back then, that was a part of our mistake, is not really understanding the full scope of, yes, it was pioneering, yes, it was future, yes, it was powerful, but it wasn't the right time to push into the market because they had dial-up and slower internet speeds.
But when you described to me the first venture, you said you were kind of going at it for 6 months without a sale, without even being able to give it away for free, but you kept going.
Mm-hmm.
With this one, you pulled the plug after only 22 clients.
Yeah. But
Is that
for
knowing?
years,
For years.
yeah.
Is that just knowing? Is that just an instinct that we got to cut our losses?
Yeah. Well, we just served those 22, 23 customers, and we refocused the business on what for us as a small company at that time was what we were best at and where our focus should be. And we were going to have to make massive investments to take it. And we built this whole application in the cloud. And then if we wanted to really scale it, we were going to have to make millions of dollars investment to move it in and add hardware and locally hosted within the property management system. So we were going to go and meet the needs of, because all these property management systems that were built in the 80s and 90s, you know, they're on-prem. So they're hardware and locally hosted and software and servers on the property and in that property management company. So we decided, hey, we'll keep going in resortsandlodges.com and our other tools that we have, the utilities we have, and we'll, over time, we'll sunset Res Tracker. But it was still a fire in us that I could really never put into words, but it was still a part of our overall vision of Res Tracker. It was just not the right time at that moment.
Yeah, or like sequence maybe. So I think this is kind of where your big current vision comes into the picture, TravelNet Solutions. Explain how that is built in layman's terms differently from these hard-coded, antiquated systems that you just described.
Yeah, so TravelNet Solutions, we incorporated TravelNet Solutions in 2004, right? So TravelNet Solutions has always been a portfolio company, and we'd have Res Tracker, Availability Tracker, resortsandlodges.com, parksandcampgrounds.com. We had these portfolio of these brands or platforms that we'd help solve our customers' greatest challenges with. And fast forward into Track, what we have with building that is we went into Track when we acquired that original platform of ResortZilla, and the way we thought about architecting it is a little bit differently than Res Tracker, because with Res Tracker, we went in and we said, hey, we're going to start, and many of all of us in this industry on the tech side, the B2B side, have architected and built our systems to say, hey, we're going to start at the small company. We're going to get 20 or 50 unit companies on, and then over time, we'll get larger and larger companies. And technologically, the problem with that is you have tech debt and you have to re-platform and rewrite modules, and it can be very, very, lengthy process, and it can be very, very expensive. And it's very, very hard to do to essentially re-platform. When you think about Oracle spent, $8 billion trying to build a complete accounting solution for the middle market. And then after they threw in the towel, they said, hey, I'm just going to buy NetSuite. And what did they buy NetSuite for? Like $8-9 billion. So to really re-platform a technology and move it into the cloud is very, very time consuming and very, very expensive. So when we went in and the way we architected our platform at TravelNet and on Track is we went straight into the enterprise. So we partnered with Southern Vacation Rentals out of Northwest Florida. They were on Property Plus, and we moved them over to Track, but we went straight into the enterprise. And the way we architected it was for the enterprise, a meta-driven model and one data set. And we've architected it for the larger companies, enterprise companies. And so it was very methodical that we didn't want to start at 50 or 60 unit companies. We want to go straight into the 500,000 unit companies and handle them and allow them as a platform so then they can grow beyond even where they're at today and add on and build onto our platform even if they'd like to.
And the modules that you describe, it's a different kind of coding in terms of updates and iteration, if I'm understanding it correctly, than how a lot of previous systems are built?
Yeah, so the way many systems can be one monolithic platform, right? And it's just one code base, a whole entire code base. And for us, we built ours with different modules. So we built ours with the CRM at the core, And then we have our property management and those modules of accounting and reservations and our whole pricing module and our whole group module. All of them we built in modules. Housekeeping and maintenance, that's its own module. And we did it that way so then we could essentially have micro teams, engineering and product groups that would have just a product team around operations, housekeeping, maintenance, or a team just around our CRM. So they can continuously develop on the platform without having to launch and release this huge monolithic code base. And every time we do a release, we got to release the entire platform. And we can make faster, quicker innovations and iterations on the platform by saying, hey, we're just going to relaunch the the operations or housekeeping module. We're going to make updates to that, and we can launch that and make that at greater speed, more attractive for our customers.
The CRM at the core is, I think, a defining factor of Track. At least was one of the big things that for us set it apart from the others, because a CRM is not just something you can bolt onto a system and expect it to really flex, compared to a system that's literally built around the backbone of a CRM. How do you see the CRM fitting into the hospitality world, specifically vacation rentals?
Yeah, so part of the vision early on was we wanted the CRM to be at the core because the customer of the guest and the owner is at the core. And many of our predecessors and the way we built ResTracker and the way the largest systems were built in the hotel industry it was an accounting decision. Accounting was built at the core. And so we always thought about building it in this next generation platform as the CRM at the core, the guest and the owner is what matters, right? And then we'll add on our whole accounting and finance module. And so all these would be modules, all interconnected through APIs and really microservices that would eventually be built, all connected into the CRM. And that's important because when you think about many of the early systems that were built, you could have make a reservation, it could be Matt Landau, right? And then you come in a wedding group and Matt Landau's there again. So it's very hard to really ensure that you have that contact and you dedupe the contacts, and because if you don't have that flexibility, then how do you drive automations and booking anniversaries and to get you to come back and to get you to be a returning guest? The complexity of data becomes a great challenge for companies. And for the vacational industry, many of these companies don't have teams of 5 or 10, their own engineering groups. They don't have huge marketing teams, monster sales teams. So we got to do more with less. So how do you enable this industry with best of breed technology, an amazing platform where they can do everything with their guests and their owners across and or have parties, third parties connect into it and really help them manage their business with more automation and efficiency. Because our industry, as we know it, is very, is in the back office can be very, very manual, doing a lot of repetitive tasks, right? And so that's the way we've thought about it at the core.
We're here in Charleston at the Data and Revenue Conference. In the room just around the corner, there are several hundred independent property managers who are all leaders in their respective marketplaces. But one of the things I think makes them most unique is that they have this rare ability to do things within their business themselves if they need to. I was just talking with someone this morning who needed to step in and clean a home, who needed to step in and solve a HVAC problem. But also the ability to step back and kind of be the leader of their organization, to have a vision of the future. Is there something about that duality that you think makes the vacation rental entrepreneur unique?
Yeah, I think, well, from my perspective, I think what excites me and I think what excites our company and why we love this industry is you find so many, yes, entrepreneurs, but the great ones, the leaders, they know their business very, very well, and they can get like into that foxhole. They can get deep into their workflows and their issues within their business, but their ability, and I'm not sure even many of them know they're doing it, but their innate ability to get into the detail and then get back up and be strategic is really a powerful gift in how to lead and manage and grow companies. And it's an art, and there's some science behind it that I'm trying to learn to get better at myself every day. You know, how to stand up, you know, be strategic, delegate, but also at certain times get down in the detail and help your people and your team members solve problems, not solve problems for them, but help be in conversation and brainstorm and support them and help them, and then come back up and be strategic and lead your organization. You know, because there's a lot on their hands. They're thinking about their owners and owner retention and the roll-ups and the regional roll-ups and the labor shortage. All of these are at the top of their minds and at the top of their agenda that they're thinking about every day. So they have to get in the detail, and they're coming up trying to be strategic and lead. That's you know, that's not easy when you're in these middle tier to larger companies.
And listeners, I'd even go as far as to say that this is the unglamorous, really difficult job of any vacation rental professional, especially the small ones who are trying to get to that next level. So we don't really have the magic pill here, but I think it's worth sometimes calling out a problem, recognizing that other people share it as a first step to unpacking it, and then perhaps coming up with the next solution.
With all the things that Track does, automating activities that are redundant or that people just don't want to do, or they're time consuming, what are you finding that your partners are spending their human capital on the most? What activities are they getting credit for?
Yeah, they're more in the field, working with their owners, their guests. I mean, you know, there's a real war on owners. When you think about it, I mean, there's only so many five-bedroom homes on 30A. I mean, there's only so many 3-bedroom cabins in Gatlinburg. And so when you have that finite inventory, the war on owners, and you have the big guys, the Vicasas and these regionals and local companies, I mean, you have adjacent markets of the hotel industry coming in, trying to put together vacational management companies. You have new startups coming in. So the competition is more fierce than it's ever been before. You have to really make sure that you have your people deployed in the field, working with guests and owners, and working on beautifully designed software is critically important. But majority of it is they're in the field and working with their guests and owners and doing things that, hey, you can't automate. You still need a human being to go in and change the bed sheets. You know, I don't know there's a robot that can do that yet.
And now a word from our sponsors. One of my favorite things to do is to ask a vacation rental tech CEO to endorse or at least describe a company that they really like. We have on the line Sean Miller, the president of Point Central, and Jeremy Gall, the founder of Breezeway. Jeremy, how do you describe the value proposition of Point Central to property managers that you come in contact with?
Point Central and keyless entry just feels to me as a necessity for property managers. You can't afford to take the time to be running keys back and forth to properties or meeting guests or using lock boxes. People want a predictable experience. And with keyless entry solutions like Point Central, you can make sure people actually got into the property. You know they got into the property through the notifications. And then you can tie in other services like Breezeway and other notifications to really supercharge your operation.
That's very well put. Sean Miller, do you approve of that message?
I do approve of that message.
If you'd like to do a demo with Point Central, head over to pointcentral.com/VRMB. They're now taking on vacation rental managers with less than 25 properties, which is a complete game changer. And how would you describe the value proposition of Breezeway to those who aren't aware of it?
Yeah, so Breezeway, I think, it's been interesting, right? I think cleanliness in a home was before really just part of that initial impression, right? How did, when a guest show up, a property manager provide that wow feeling, and having a consistent and complete cleaning process was important to that. Cleanliness is now not just becoming a nice to have, but a standard of what a guest expects with the world around us, and increased focus on our health as part of cleanliness and safety. And so I think what Breezeway provides in this easy to use tool that is very flexible, right? Every property manager understands that, every vacation rental home is different. There's different nooks and crannies and nuances and barbecue grills and how each thing needs to get taken care of, that, a human being can probably remember after enough repetition, but having a tool like Breezeway that helps remove that doubt and make sure that every person who touches a home to clean it will follow the same process, and therefore provide the same clean wow factor when that guest shows up, is a critical need in today's vacation rental world.
Beautiful. That was a fun role reversal, guys. Good job. If you'd like to do a demo with Breezeway and get free implementation valued at $1,000, head over to breezeway.io/VRMB.
You have a pretty strong vision for this tech-enabled hospitality movement. If you're a manager today, what are you doing to really carve out your own moat to continue running the business as profitably as possible for as long as possible? And my follow-up is going to be, what are you avoiding at all costs?
Yeah. So I think this is the generation of this big buzzword we hear all over the world right now, which is digital transformation in the digital business. And this is the opportunity of this generation to use technology to enable these companies to drive automation. When you think about it, digital transformation, you have the labor shortage, you have the war on owners, guests, the demands of employees, the patience of owners and guests. That whole world. And then you're trying to add bandwidth with great employees. How do you do that if you don't have beautifully designed software? How do you do that if you don't enable your people and your owners with the best software, the most beautifully designed applications, platforms for them to do work with more efficiency? We're asking our people to be in antiquated systems. We're doing it ourselves. We're moving to the next generation software for our own internal company. And we're asking our people to be in antiquated, fragmented tools that we've somehow or another jerry-rigged these 10 or 15 different utilities to be able to deliver some type of experience to our employees, guests, and owners. And so for me, I think it always starts, for us in our company, always starts with a technology vision map. Hey, what's our system of record? What's the platform, right? And how do we have an all-in-one solution, not or best of breed, right? But an all-in-one solution and best of breed tools, right? It's not an or function. Jim Collins, I love in his book Good to Great and Entrepreneur 2.0 and How the Mighty Fall, and he talks a lot about this philosophy of the and or the or. And so much of us in business, or it has to be this or this. And it's like, well, no, you can have a all-in-one solution and still have best of breed tools, right? No business is ever just going to want to use one platform and do everything in their entire business, right? I don't see that coming anytime soon. But you can have an all-in-one platform and you can still use some best of breed tools. And so when you look at your technology vision map, you're saying, okay, here's my system of record, and then across the buyer's journey of my guests and owners, employees, these are the 3 or 4 main tools that I'm going to use to operate my business. We don't get out of whack again and all of a sudden we got 15, 20 different tools that we're using. Oh, let's use SurveyMonkey. Okay, well, we got to fix this problem. So let's put some bubble gum here and use this chat functionality of Drift, right? Or whatever the tool is out there. And then all of a sudden you find yourself 5, 10, 15 years later and you're like, holy cow, I got a mess in the back office of my technology footprint.
Whole bunch of bubble gum.
Whole bunch of bubble gum. And And we've seen that ourselves, being entrepreneurial, growing and building the company. And it takes time and effort to really think through your platform and how you're best going to serve those guests and owners and those employees.
So if the answer to the first question is embrace technology and have a technology vision map, what's the answer to the second question? What do you as a business try desperately to avoid?
Yeah, I think try to avoid, we see a problem and then we just quickly go throw some module or some tool at it, then really think through it and say, okay, well, how is this going to impact the entire customer journey? And the customer journey is not just the guest, it's your employee, it's the owner. And how do you orchestrate that all within your current tech footprint to have them all work in concert? And I see that. And we bring new leaders in, right? Because this labor shortage, the war on talent we're facing as owners and running businesses, and we're trying to add more capacity and bandwidth to add more people to compete. And all of a sudden you get new leaders come in, or new managers, or a new group of people, and they say, hey, this is a new piece of technology out there, let's go implement this new chat functionality, as just an example. And what we fail to realize is the security. It's another thing we have to train all of our people on. It's another thing we have to have security around, either PCI or some type of security. And it becomes, password protection. And then all of a sudden that's a new tool that's hooked into your platform, and now other data could be at risk. So, I mean, the way you think about your platform today looks wildly different than you looked at even 5 or 10 years ago. And that's, again, why I believe so heartily, I'm so passionate about digital transformation is, yes, there's positives, but there's also negatives to it. And Matt, what used to be done in 5 years, man, is now being done in 5 months. The speed and acceleration is at a remarkable pace. You can't even keep it straight, even here at this conference. I mean, just all these different tools these companies can use. How do you know which one you should deploy for your organization, and what makes the biggest impact?
We were talking about the Eric Broughton interview the other day from Inhabit IQ, and the role of private equity in the tech space, specifically in the vacation rental tech space. What strings do you think come attached to that? How does that influence our constituents, the owners and the managers who are using these products?
Yeah, look, I mean, there's nothing wrong with private equity. There's nothing wrong with venture capital. There's nothing wrong with going with your local bank and taking on debt to grow your company. It's what lever are you trying to pull to build your company? But I do know, like, you have to understand with your business going, okay, private equity has anywhere between a 3 and 7 year exit, right? So that fund wants a return, right? So whatever their LP is, they want that return in 3 to 5 or 3 to 7 years, depending on how patient they are, right? And part of that in private equity is they're not as much as venture capital or growth capital, where they're like, hey, let's make huge investments and go and dominate the market. Private equity is a little bit different in their approach, is they still want to drive profitability, right? So what happens when you're rolled up in private equity, and that I've seen and I've experienced in B2B and the B2B tech space is, there's profitability metrics, right? So if you got to be at 30%, 38%, 40% EBITDA, well, that is a lot of EBITDA that you're throwing away of like trying to create innovation and breakthrough with your technology and trying to bring on the best people that you can and really try to, raise the bar in an industry. So those are some of the strings attached, but that's all each person's perspective and what they're searching for in their business. But I love it, right? I love it because it creates new competition, right? It's kind of like Comcast, the bundle and unbundle, the cable. I mean, everything goes through, it's all cyclical, right? You bundle it up, you unbundle it, you bundle it up. I mean, see it with Vacasa, any of these other companies. But you go through that seasonality and those cycles within business. And for us, it was we're onto something. I mean, look, for us, 7 years ago when we bought Resortzilla, turned it into Track, I mean, our objective from the very beginning, man, is we said, hey, we want to be the defining platform in the 21st century for vacation rental companies. And so with that big vision, that's been a big part of our purpose of what we're trying to do. And so we just haven't done the private equity or venture rounds because we want the ability to really write our own story, you know. And
What's the biggest thing that you've learned in this vacation rental story of yours?
yeah, it's many of these businesses, there are so many awesome people and great people I've learned so much from, but they're really like running little cities. And the complexity and the manual labor and the tools they're using, and you know, that's been a big part of it from like a business standpoint. But I think what drives us and what I've learned the most, and this has been part of the fabric of our, really in our DNA since we started the company. It's much easier to verbalize today, again, than it was back then, which is we're really purposeful. We're purpose driven, and when you sit down with these companies, you really understand the why. I mean, yeah, they're changing the HVAC, they're going in and snaking the toilet, right? I mean, whatever it is, I mean, they're in it, they're in the throes of it, and you go and you say, hey, what's the why? Well, you know, man, you have families. The ultimate luxury is time, and you have families that they get 1 or 2 vacations a year where they can spend and have a reprieve and be together, the hustle, and get out of the hustle and bustle, and they can spend make those memorable experiences a reality. You have a husband and wife, or you have a couple, or you have a girlfriend's weekend getaway, you have a guy's trip up to go golfing, and they're making that. I mean, that's really awesome for us, that we get to facilitate those experiences for those families and be able to leverage our technology. But I mean, for me, that's one of the biggest things that I've learned is their passion. And I love that passion that these property managers, it just gets me juiced and fired up to build great technology for them so they can like wow their owners, they can wow their guests. Like, we get to build that for them, man. Like, they are I mean, they get to bring families back together, man. Like, they get to bring couples together. They get to, you know, cousins going in a 15-bedroom in the Outer Banks of North Carolina. I mean, what's cooler than that?
And listeners, you're not here, but Ryan looks like he's about to run through a wall right now to like attack someone. He's so fiercely passionate about this. Is there something about that passion that you think gives us an advantage over people who are in this for transactions?
If they're in it just for the financials, if they're in it just for the dollar, right? You'll know them by their fruit. We'll know them by their actions.
I've never heard that phrase before.
Okay.
You'll know them by their fruit.
Yeah, know them by their fruit.
Must be a Minnesota phrase.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, and it's action, right? Over the long haul. We've been playing the long game, man, for 20 years, right? I'm in the 3rd decade of this. The first decade was finding some market fit. Second decade was scale. This decade, man, for our company, it's all about multiplying. All the gifts we've been given, all the blessings we've been given, how do we help multiply for more and beyond just ourselves, but for an industry? And that's what we're excited about. People get so worried about like Vacasa, or, I mean, the market's so big. It's not a winner-take-all market, man. And it's, you know, when I think about, so I was at Focusrite, right, over a decade ago. And Dara, who's now the CEO of Uber, was the CEO of Expedia at the time. And he said something on stage on a panel that it stayed with me ever since I heard it, which was, it's not a winner-take-all market. And at that time, I mean, over a decade ago, you had the battle of Expedia and Priceline and Booking.com, and now you see the consolidation of that market, and it's not a winner-take-all market. Now look at Uber and Airbnb and what they're doing, and Vrbo as it continues to grow. And the same thing for our industry, right? People are concerned and worried about Vacasa, but there's millions of these homes all over, and they have 30,000, okay? And you look at, for me, I look at Salesforce, the greatest cloud software company ever created, right? And they still have 10% churn or attrition a year, right? So if you think about that, that is on $8 billion in their trailing 12 months revenue. That's $800 million they're churning. In our world, if you do $100 million, you're called a unicorn, okay? They're churning 8 unicorns a year. So think about the power that other companies, the next CRMs that can get connected and pull those customers that don't want Salesforce CRM, and they can use this next generation CRM, right? And so I relate that in parallel to Vacasa. They have 30,000 units. If they're churning 3,000 units, that's creating one new Steve Milo every year, man, right? Like, it's bundled, unbundled, and Vacasa's going to have to continue to fight just like everyone else to keep owners and owners happy, and the owners, the guests, the employees, our patience we don't have patience anymore unless you can truly, truly influence the human condition. Can you truly influence the human experience? And that's what the future is all going to be about. Can you use technology and truly influence me with something so beautiful and gorgeous that I love logging into this application? I'm not logging into some system built in the 80s or 90s.
So what software do you recommend?
There are many that you can choose, and honestly, there are good softwares out there, right? But for me, without having my heart attached, we went into the enterprise, and we didn't just think of the enterprise as says, hey, you're enterprise and you got to be a Fortune 500 company. We looked at the enterprise in our industry something totally different. We looked at the enterprise as it's a way of life in a company, right? And it's a mindset. And we wanted to think about enterprises. You want to be durable, efficient, and deliver world-class experiences, memorable experiences to your guests, owners, employees. And it didn't mean you had to be a 3,000 unit property management company. I mean, there's only so many of those out there. But really what got us pretty pumped up was talking to Matt Cozy down at Cozy Vacation Rentals in Hill Country. He's at 50 rentals. What is he at, 138 right now? He's already got bookings out for 200 some vacation rentals. He's gonna go from 50 to 200. But you get on the phone with him and you talk to him for like 30 minutes and you're going, this guy thinks enterprise. He's not by sheer size enterprise, but the way he thinks and his mindset and the way he wants to develop his company is enterprise. And to me, if you're looking to be enterprise, you buy platforms, okay? Maybe if you're in it for a transaction or if you're gonna be a lifestyle business, you buy products. And if you're gonna buy a platform, okay, the next 2-3 years, the leading platforms will be clearly established. But over that same time frame, the defining platforms in this industry will be defined. We will all know who they are as a platform, and that is going to accelerate the ecosystem within our industry on the tech side. And I believe we're one of those defining companies.
Are there others?
I think others have opportunities.
Which one?
I think there's several. The way I think about it is, I mean, Streamline definitely has an option to do it. It depends on what their group, when they gotta release and they gotta sell to the next fund. I mean, what does all that mean to the future of that innovation, right? A roll-up in a vertical vacation rentals isn't the first time this has ever happened, right? Some have went successfully, some haven't gone successfully. But I think Streamline has a great shot to be a defining platform. Just depends on what is that team and what will they do long term. What will that fruit look like in 2-3 years?
Anyone else?
I I think there's some smaller ones out there that are going after maybe the 5 unit to 25, 50 unit companies. I think Lightmaker is, they're doing some interesting things. The group at Direct, Guesty is certainly, I mean, they've raised $100 million. I mean, they're much more in the international play. But also I think about platforms as, you know, the group at Breezeway. You know, they have an opportunity to say, yeah, they're an operations platform, but what does that look like over the next 2 to 3 years for them? You know, I like their group, and I think that they have some real potential to be a defining platform. And some of the pricing technologies out there are other ones that, what will that look like in terms of revenue management and pricing and from a platform perspective. But when I think about like a Salesforce platform, I mean, I just think there's just a few truly out there that have the infrastructure and the architecture that's already been built, that they could make something happen like a Salesforce in this industry, where they have the platform, but they also have the ecosystem. We have a platform, we still have housekeeping and maintenance, right? We still allow Breezeway, because we're very cooperative, to log in, and they could use Breezeway and use Track, or they could just use Track, right? But that's what you want in an ecosystem. You want that competition. Why does Salesforce have ExactTarget, which is an automation platform that they bought, and they also have Marketo and all their competitors in the same ecosystem? They have CRMs that can still hook into their ecosystem, you know? So for us, you know, those platforms have got to be very, very cooperative. You can't be closed off, and you got to think about it as an industry play where people can use our platform, build into our platform, or even our customers can build technologies by hooking into our platform.
I hope you enjoyed that interview as much as I did. One of my favorite questions to ask technology people these days is, which competitors do they admire most? And I think the answer to that question tells us a lot about both the individual's grasp on the competitive landscape, but it also tells you a lot about their humility levels. And it's just more fun to do business with people who are real and sincere and humble. And my big takeaway from the conversation with Ryan is that the next few years are going to be defining for the software space. And that if you're a smaller vacation rental manager, like let's say less than 20 properties, consider focusing on companies who are dedicated to managers like you. And oppositely, if you're a large manager, think about a software that you can grow into, as it's dangerous to grow out of something in this kind of quick growth period. Ryan is definitely humble people. He's also in the visionary category. And what I liked most about this conversation is that he's obsessed with the human aspect of the work. It's not all that often you hear someone in his position talking about bringing families together and making things beautiful and improving the human condition. I was not expecting that. And I think it's important for our emerging industry, because if we're not careful, it becomes easy for us to stray too far from home. If this kind of discussion or thought process was helpful to you, consider joining VRMB Communities, our private forum where we provide personal suggestions on software, among other things. You can join me, and actually Ryan, he's a member too, and nearly 1,000 other vacation rental professionals at vrmb.com/join. Until next time.